All right, so the first lesson we're going to work on is how to checkmate an opponent when they only have their king and you still have your queen. So what we see here is a naked board except for the kings, but white has a queen. Now, what I see a lot of beginners do is they immediately start attacking black's king. So for example, this move queen e2 would be check, attacking black's king. But this will never go anywhere. Black's king cannot ever be checkmated by the queen alone. You can push this king all the way back to the corner if you so desire. You can put this queen on any square you want. You will never be able to give checkmate to black's king with your queen alone. What you need to do is bring in your own queen to help. Or your own king to help, excuse me. Here what you're going to see is black also doesn't have to run straight to the corner. If you keep checking his king like this, he can stay in the center of the board. And your goal should be to push him to the corner. So, the way I was taught to checkmate an enemy king with a king and a queen is to do something, is a three-step process. Step one is called make a box. So what I mean by that is place your queen on a square where black's king is in a box. Remember, because a queen can move in diagonal lines or straight lines, there's no way that black's king can ever attack white's queen. If we would think about where would this king have to go to attack white's queen, it would have to come to a square like this, but then it will get taken. So, right now, what's going on is the box is like this. What we can see is these lines that I've drawn. Black's king is stuck inside that box. No matter how many moves you give this king, it will not be able to cross those lines. So for example here, you cannot ever cross over this file because the queen will take it. So what we see is this box here, queen with queen to h3 and queen to c8. So once you have put your opponent's king in the box, this is very important. Step 2 is called copy the king. This is very straightforward. Wherever black's king moves, so let's say here, we're going to start by playing a move with our king. Now, wherever black's king moves, no matter what he does, you always move in the exact same way. So for example, if he comes here, we're going to go queen d3. Black went one square to the right, we also go one square to the right. As soon as black moves his king, we always do the exact same maneuver with our queen. And you'll find that no matter how this works, the box will shrink. So if we can see here, this box is like this, which means black has some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 25 squares inside this box. That's a lot of room for black's king to roam around and hope to be safe. But after king f4 and queen d3, what we see is now the box has gotten smaller. And here black now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now he only has 20 squares to move around in. And it does not matter where this king goes, the box will always get smaller. So after king e5, we can go queen c4. And now here, the box is smaller still. Just remember, always copy the king. Now, once you have copied the king enough, eventually it will get forced down the board. So for example, here what we see is the king now, if we were to laser it off like this, the king now has only 16 squares left in his box. That's 16. It's getting smaller. And then when it comes here, and we go there, here's our box. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 times 5 is 15. No matter what happens, always copy the king, and the box will shrink. So we're going to keep on copying this king. No matter where it goes, we copy him. So at this point, what we see is now the box is down to 6 squares. That's getting really small. In fact, black's only move now is to bring his king here. Again, we keep copying the king. And this is now, I guess it's a similar 6 squares, but we're pushing him even further away. So eventually now this king is going to have to get pushed onto the side of the board. So after king h7 and queen f6 and king g8 and queen e7, our step is complete. The next thing we have to know, stop copying the king once it is pushed into a corner square. So Here, if black were to play king h8, now we must stop copying the king. At this point here, this box is now in theory 3 squares, but the f8 square doesn't really count because the queen controls it as well. So, what's going on is black's king is now stuck between these 2 squares until the end of time. If we were ever to bring our queen to the f7 square, this would now be stalemate because this king cannot move. He's not under attack from white's queen. Can't come here, can't come here, and can't come here because white's queen controls all of these squares. So, once the king is in the corner, you stop copying the king, and that's when you're going to bring your own king up. So, what your goal is to control these 2 squares with your king. So, we're going to bring our king up like so. King to f3, king to g8, king to g4, king to h8, and eventually this king can come off the board like so. And finally now, with the white king covering these 2 squares, white has any number of moves that will give checkmate. All he has to do is place his queen on a square that controls both of these squares. This is because white's king is coming up to control the other 2 that black could use. So this could come with, for example, queen f8, when black's king is under attack. Had we had this same position with white's king back home, black would be able to escape to h7. But because our own king is controlling that square, black is now in checkmate. Similarly, queen e8 would do the job as well. Again, if our king were back home, black's king could escape to either of these squares, but our king controls them. So, here as well, queen d8 is the same story. Queen's covering that way, and the king is covering these 2 squares. And finally, you can even just stick the queen right in front of black's king. You can play queen g7, and the point is that your queen is right up next to his king, but he cannot take your queen, as that would place his king next to your queen, and then you would take his king and win the game. So queen g7 is checkmate, and in fact, even queen h7 is checkmate. So, to recap, the tasks in order. 1, build a box. 2, copy the king all the way until he reaches the corner. 3, once that king is in the corner, stop copying the king and bring in your own king to give checkmate once he has been confined to 2 squares at the very edge of the board. With that, you should be able to deliver checkmate with a king and queen against a king. Thanks very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you for the next one, where we talk about king and rook against king, which is a little bit harder.